We go. I'm excited to be with Emily Ann once again. It's been almost a year since we talked about her first novel. It's called If I Go, and now we're on book two.
Yes.
Emily, tell us, catch us up on what's been going on in your life this last almost year.
Yeah, so I published If I Go, which was my first novel. And then back in February, I published my second, which is Where I Stand. It's the second book in my Valiant Devotion series. I also did a fall anthology that we published in October. I published with
Oh, I
three
like
other
that.
authors. And that was a very fun project. We kind of tackled a different time period throughout history, starting in the 1600s, going all the way up to the 1900s, and in the fall season. So each of us picked a time period, and then we wrote a little, like, 25,000 word short story that takes place. And so we have a story in Europe, a story in Canada, New Jersey, and the Appalachian Mountains. So it's a
Wow.
really cool
So it's called
fall
All
through
Through
time.
Time. I love that. And the cover is beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, so
Wow.
that was those are my three projects that I've been working on, and then I'm working on the third book of the Valiant Devotion series right now. I'm hoping to release that this summer.
And you are
And I am
expecting,
expecting our third, yes.
and when does that baby due?
September. So I'm trying to publish the
Yeah.
last book before
Before,
everything gets crazy.
yeah,
So I do feel like I'm on a bit of a timeline with this one because I know
yeah.
as soon as this baby comes, I'm not going to be motivated to do any of the hard stuff with these books. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm trying to take advantage. I'm in my second trimester now, so I'm trying to take advantage of getting some energy back. But I know as soon as I get into that third trimester, I'm going to start slowing down again. So I'm really trying
Wow.
to
And
get
so you
this
have
done.
already have two little ones. So
I do.
a 5-year-old, and how old is the other?
5, and she's 6. She'll be 7 next month. So
Wow. Wow. So exciting times.
it
Yes.
is. It's a busy time, but it's nice because every single day is filled with things to keep me busy. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. So, so all listeners will understand and know that these books are historical fiction, romance, right? Historical. What
yeah,
do you call them?
yeah, yeah. So I list them as historical fiction because with my first book, If I Go, I had somebody tell me that there wasn't enough romance in it. So for
Hmm.
it, even though it's a very heavy romance book, so um, and I understand, some historical romances spend more on the romance than like the historical aspect, whereas I enjoy the setting, the historical settings, and really building that world up. So I do market it as a historical fiction, but every single book does have romance in it.
Well, when I first started, I had an agent at one time, and she said I should, because I'd started with women's fiction, and now it's Southern fiction, and more heavily romantic, but I still have it's got more depth than your formulaic romance, because I'm not really big on that. But she said, you title it women's fiction with an strong element of romance, and you could do the same historical fiction with a strong element of romance. But I think people are. I don't know. It's funny what people's expectations, and I would talk to more than one or two people about how to list your books because that's really a personal preference, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if I like, these have enough romance that my husband wouldn't pick these up. Like he wouldn't be drawn to them because of the romance. Um, but apparently there wasn't enough. I don't know. So I mean, I enjoy either one. I enjoy reading historical fiction and historical
Yeah,
romance.
I do
And
too.
there is a line that's very faint between both. I feel like most have kind
It's
of crossed.
clear. Right.
Yeah.
But it's to me, I don't know. I think every story um needs a little romance. I don't think it's I like it more when there's a romantic element into whatever story I'm reading, whatever that may
Yeah.
be. I don't know. That's just that romantic part of me, I guess, but I like that. So,
Yeah, I'm the same way.
yeah. So if I go, do the characters in Where I Stand, are they the same, different? Are they side characters? How did you plot that out?
So, in my second book, Where I Stand, the common themes throughout the book, the valiant devotion kind of themes, and the location of it being in Charleston, South Carolina, are really the only two things that these two books have in common. Those are the themes that carry on throughout my series. So these characters are actually brand new characters. They don't have any ties to the characters in If I Go.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, the setting, obviously, it takes place later. If I Go is Civil War. Where I Stand is World War One.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense then. Wasn't
Yeah.
aware. So, um, are you from Charleston? You are, right?
Yes.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
envy you. I envy you.
I grew up in Charleston. I do live in the upstate now. I moved away from
Okay.
Charleston after college, but my family is still in Charleston.
We were just there last summer. We were traveling. We were actually heading for Florida for a birthday party for one of my husband's good friends. Stopped in Savannah and stopped in Charleston, and it's
Mm.
just beautiful cities. You know, it's just
Yeah,
immersed in
both of those
history.
cities are very beautiful.
Although my husband just read they're having a huge homeless issue in Savannah right now, where they're actually people are just settling in tents right there in the areas where people are generally touring. So that's pretty sad. So,
Yeah, I believe that. I do feel like the charm that these historic cities have is starting to dwindle because we do have a lot of people moving in and um yeah, I think the homeless problem is everywhere too because even I'm near Greenville, South Carolina now, and
okay.
we were there. I mean, we haven't been back in over a year, even though we only live like 30 minutes away, because we were just appalled by the amount of homeless people just shouting and as small kids, like I don't want to expose them to
Right.
that. So we just haven't gone back and it's kind of becoming a problem.
Yeah, that's sad. And I do think that so many people, as the years go by and we get more separation between time periods of history, there isn't the young people are not as immersed in history as maybe we were when we were younger, you know, growing up with it. I loved history. I mean, I taught history, so of course I loved it, but there's always been something to me, you know, an old soul loving to be around historic places and just taking that in. And
Mhm.
I don't know that they're, you know, as the years go by and we get more people coming into the world, I don't think that's a focus. They don't there's not as much patriotism as there once was. And I think that's a huge loss for us as a country.
Yeah, I would agree. And I do find some I guess, hope. And I think the homeschool community is different. And because there are so many more people homeschooling now,
Mhm.
we try to go to these like reenactments and historic places whenever we have like a free weekend. And that is the large demographic you can tell are
Yeah.
these homeschool kids. And so I really hope that maybe not this generation, but maybe the next generation, there is kind of like a revival of
Resurgence. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, when I was teaching middle school, I actually took three different classes every other year. I took three different classes to Washington, D.C.
wow,
And Williamsburg, and we did all the touring. And the kids seeing that came alive, like when you can actually touch it and see
yeah,
like the Vietnam War Memorial Wall, or see, you know, the men lifting the flag in my mind is going blank on all of them, but when they lifted the flag for the Japanese on the Japanese, you know, when
yeah,
that, and they see that and they read it and they take it in, it becomes alive for them and it becomes real. It's hard when all you're doing is reading stuff in a history book and you think it's old stuff and it doesn't pertain. But I do think if we forget our history, we're going to be doomed to repeat it, and there are going to be some mistakes made again. So
yeah. I definitely agree with that.
anyway, so tell us about Tell us about Where I Stand, the
Yes.
characters and what's going on in that story.
So Where I Stand follows three characters. It's 3 points of view. It is the main girl Helen, and her brother Lucas, and then the man here John. Helen and Lucas are from a very high society, like generational wealth kind of um, place in Charleston. They've never had to go without anything. And so like Helen is very, very spoiled. She is used to getting everything that she wants. And her brother he's not like, I wouldn't say he's spoiled in the sense of kind of being a spoiled brat like his sister. He just doesn't want to grow up because he hasn't had to have any responsibility. Everything's been done for him. And then John, the third man or third character, is just new into the city of Charleston. He's trying to build a life for himself. He's a mechanic, very much a blue collar worker. And so it kind of follows these three as the U.S. joins World War One. The two men are both drafted
I
into
thought you said it took place in World War II. Did I
sorry,
misunderstand?
no, World War One. Yeah,
Oh, okay. I thought you said World War II. Sorry.
yeah. So World War One,
Okay.
1917. And so we kind of see how the war, even though we were only involved in it for like a year and a half,
Yeah.
just how much these characters grew. In Charleston, like Helen, obviously she doesn't go off to war, but the war does impact her
Yeah.
life. And then the other two, like how they grow and mature, um, and kind of step into the men that they're supposed to be through this war.
In your first book, remind me, and maybe I'm wrong, didn't you have a brother, sister, and then a side character in that one too?
No, in my first book, it was two like childhood friends
Okay.
who, yeah, and so and if I go, the girl and the boy were both grew up in Charleston, but the boy's family moved up north because of political differences as the war was breaking out. And there is a third side character in that book, but he's not
Okay.
related. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. I remembered there being three point of view characters. I guess I just forgot which. So many books, so little time, so many
yeah,
characters. I have a hard time keeping my own character straight, let alone somebody else's characters.
yeah.
What is your writing process like? You have two kids at home and you're homeschooling, obviously.
Yes.
And so how do you get the time in to write? Are you a fast writer? Are you a pantser plotter or somewhere in between? Just kind of give us a glimpse of your day.
Yeah, so I am definitely a messy writer as far as I have a general idea of where I want the book to go, and then I just start writing. And when I go to write, I don't necessarily have each chapter outlined. I am more of a drafter. Um,
Hmm.
so after I write the book, then I'll kind of sit with it for a little bit and then decide what I like, what I don't like. I do run it through some different like alpha and beta readers to kind of get their feedback on what's working and what's not. And then, each book has like three or four drafts.
Oh my gosh.
I know that's how my brain works.
Everybody's so different the way they write. Like that would create I'm like you where I used to be more of a plotter, but now I'm a chapter at a time because I'm basically waiting for God to intervene
mm,
and direct it. But then
yeah.
I have to have that chapter perfect before I can move on to the next one. I would never be able to do what you do. Bless your heart.
I think I would get too bored with it if I focused on one chapter for so long.
Okay.
I need to have the whole story done and kind of know where I want it to end up. And then when I go back through it's easier for me to adapt each chapter and make sure that the characters are hitting the points that they need to hit. And as far as like when I have the time, my husband's in law enforcement, so he actually works a lot of night shifts. And so, I'll put my kids to bed at 7, and if I don't go to bed till 10, that's 3 hours
Right.
a
Oh yeah.
night that I have uninterrupted
That's
on
true.
the weeks where my husband's working. So that's really when I do the bulk of my writing. And then, if I, like right now the weather's nice, it's mild, so my kids will be outside playing, and then that's when I'll go in and edit or, you know, proofread some stuff. But the heavy writing is definitely done in
Wow.
the evening when my husband's gone.
Well, I don't stew in a chapter that long. I'm done with a chapter in a day, but
Oh,
I hear
wow.
what you're saying. It's not like I'm sitting there for a week working on a chapter, but I sit down and in the beginning, it's amazing to me how I can sit there and the first line is the hardest, and once I get the first line out, it writes itself after that. But then I have to go
Yeah.
back and proofread it and edit before I move on. And I have two critique partners, and every other week they get a chapter, and it has to be in the best possible shape. I mean, I believe that, one of my critique partners is like that. She's very anal. The other one, you always wrote nonfiction, so now she's writing fiction. So it's anyone's guess how that's going to play out. But it's been interesting how different people. There was one author I've interviewed a couple times. I love her dearly. She's a sweet woman of God. She will actually dictate her book. I could never do. I hear people say, "Oh, I'll just go take a walk and I'll dictate my book, or I can write it." I can't do that. I have to see the words
Not
or
either.
something. I don't know. To me, that's a gift if you can do that because imagine the time that you'll save. Oh, I'm just going to dictate it on my way to work or something, or I'll dictate it.
Right.
That would
You
be so
could
much
do it while you're doing
easier.
laundry or
I
something.
know. It would be so much easier to be able to just hang out and talk it and not have to write it. Of course, my little dog would be very unhappy because he's my writing partner. So if I'm sitting down, a lot of times I'll sit in the recliner instead of my office, and he comes up and he's a little Maltese, so he's only 7 pounds. He'll
Oh.
come up and he'll snuggle in next to me, and my husband keeps saying, "You help Mama write her story," and he's my little writing partner. So he wouldn't like it if I had to dictate, although he could get more walks that way. It's a thought. Yeah, people are different. Everybody's so different. That's why I love doing these interviews and finding out what works for one person doesn't work for another. So if you
Mhm.
have somebody interested in wanting to be a writer, I don't know if you have critique groups or you have people that you talk to that are always asking you, how can I be a writer? What should I do? For you, how did this pan out? How did it start? Was it a dream you had from early on? I have no one gal that during COVID, she just said, well, I don't have anything to do. I'm going to write. And she's done really well. And I'm kind of
Wow.
like, wow, I've been working on this 15 years and you've been doing it for 5. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed writing. I know I homeschool my kids, but I was also homeschooled for most of my education. And that was something that I just enjoyed doing. I enjoyed writing. I remember being, 13, 14, I think when I got my first laptop, and I don't even think there was internet on there, but I had Microsoft Word, and I just had a blast writing stories. My favorite part of school was creative writing.
Hmm.
So it's always been something that I've enjoyed. And then, now that, and it's funny because I'm about to go back into the baby phase, but within the last few years, my youngest has gotten to the point where he can entertain himself for a while without me, needing to be right up on him. He can go play in the sandbox. He can, play with his trains or whatever. And so that has given me freedom to even start daydreaming and planning and
Right.
plotting. So I've kind of um, I guess, come into my writing hobby again. And I'm trying to take advantage of this time before this baby comes because
Right.
I know it's going to be a while before I feel up to it again. But yeah, I just really enjoy it. This is definitely the hobby that I naturally go towards. I'm not, I would rather write than watch a TV show.
Right.
For me, like it's more creative, it's more stimulating for me to, constantly have these characters where I'm wondering, how a book would go if I did this or did that. Um, yeah, so it's been a something that I've always enjoyed, but I've rediscovered here in the last couple of years.
So you've got a great imagination. See, when I started writing, we had was called pen and paper. You know, there weren't even, I mean, my mom at that time when I was started writing, my mom was a administrative assistant and she learned to type on one of those typewriters with the big keys, that go down. She could type 75 words a minute on one of
Oh my
those things.
goodness.
And I couldn't even, I was like, oh, I'd have her type my papers if I had to type them because I couldn't do it. I didn't get a computer until, not a computer, I didn't even get an electric typewriter till much later. And then it was electric typewriter for a long time. So when old people like us went to college and we had to type out there was no copy and paste. There was an actual typewriter that you had to put your
Mhm.
footnotes on. And if you typed up the whole page and you missed it by one line and you couldn't fit your footnote, you had to start all over again.
Oh, yeah.
We earned our papers back then, I'll tell you. But
Yeah.
it's so much easier now. I can't imagine going back. I do know there is a gal that I interviewed not long ago. She writes her stories out shorthand. I mean, longhand. She writes her stories out on a paper. I I wouldn't get much written in my hand. I would get tired, but there are
Yeah.
people, everybody does something different, but yeah. And I did
Yeah.
the same thing as you. I took every creative writing class I could in high school and then in college. I did everything I could to write, but
Mhm.
I don't have the imagination. I don't imagine that you do. It sounds like you're very creative in your imagination, and sometimes I just need my mind to shut down. Do you ever get that where you just need to shut it off for a while? So,
I mean, yeah, for me, like that's kind of the place where I go if I do feel overwhelmed, then I think it's easier for me if I'm overwhelmed in my own life to just create a
yes,
story where someone else is overwhelmed
that's
and
right.
remove myself from it.
Transfer that off to
Energy,
someone
yeah.
else. So, what would you tell somebody who wanted to be a writer if that was in their heart? What would you tell them to, how would you tell them to start? Have you gone to conferences and how did you learn the craft of writing and all those types of things?
Well, I would say, you know, the most important thing, and I know it's so cliche, but is to just start. Even if you maybe just have like a scene that you have in your mind or a setting that you want to describe, just starting and just putting something down. Um, I find that whenever I'm starting something new, if I can just put something down, just write something, um, that kind of encourages me to keep going. But
Going.
um, yeah, I had a professor in college who really it's funny because it wasn't a creative writing class at all. It was just like a general classical literature class. But because I am naturally a creative writer, I couldn't help but bring some of that into my essays that I was writing. And I'm so glad that he didn't get annoyed by because I would say, well, this character felt this like a leaf feeling, like in the and
Waxing
like let it
poetic.
yeah, but I could see how that'd be annoying, but he praised me for it and he encouraged me in
Oh,
that.
good.
And I really got excited when I got that kind of feedback, because that's naturally how I write. And to be encouraged in that and not being like fit into a box,
Right.
of what,
Stifling you. Yeah.
yeah. And I think homeschooling helped me with that too, because there wasn't ever like a format of how I was supposed to write anything that I wrote in high school. And so it just allowed me to find my own writing style. So, I guess my feedback would, or my advice would be to write something and then find somebody that you trust to read over it for you and tell you what they liked and what they didn't like, what you could work on. I really value the few people that I do have that I show my work before it's published. I value their feedback so much, and I take it to heart. And I think it's easy, especially if you've never written before, to feel like
Overwhelmed.
embarrassed or overwhelmed,
Yeah.
or scared to share or get any sort of negative feedback. You just take it personally. But for me, I think to get negative feedback, it actually helps me. Like it makes me feel good because I know that that person cares enough to really point out the areas that I need to improve on. I'd rather have
Right.
somebody tell me like this isn't working than to just shower me in empty praises.
Right. You need constructive criticism.
Yeah.
That's something I would encourage people to do. Thought about this because I just got an email come in. I've written several stories for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I think
Mm,
that's a really good avenue to, if you're excited about the idea of being published and but you don't haven't written a book and you want to start something small, they have all kinds of those books coming out and they're always taking submissions and they always have like the one that comes up is sharing your blessings or sharing your amazing animal, your pet. Like I one of mine was my a soul sniffer was a story I did about my dog, but it was creative, even though it was true. You could bring
mhm.
in dialogue and you could bring in all that stuff. And the nice
Yeah.
thing is when you do get published with, and we were talking about this earlier, you don't make much money as a writer. When you do
Mm,
get published, you get $200 for your story plus 10 copies of the book. So if
okay.
it's a 1200, it's a 1200 word limit. So you
Mm,
have to learn how to keep it short and concise. And I think that's key when you're just starting to write, you know
yeah.
so that you can get a whole story out. And that's one way to start with short stories, I think, is doing
Yeah,
something
I
like
would
that or
agree.
going to anthologies. You have people that are willing to take stories in for that. So
Yeah.
that is another way. But it's interesting to see how you have over time come and I like that the idea of being homeschooled, how you've been able to do more creative things with that in mind
Mhm.
allowing you not to be set into a box where you had to really keep things tight up. And it's harder, when I'm twice your age. So when I was in school, it was like we were very regimented. But until I got into high school and they were offering classes like writing through children's literature. And so you would read literature and you would write. And I was fortunate to be in a high school that would offer those types of things, and a journalism and different things that a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
schools
amazing.
didn't. Yeah, so that is helpful. But another thing, community colleges, it costs nothing. Your community college, look and see if you want to learn the craft of writing, but you can't afford to go to a conference, you can't afford a lot of things. Community college is a great place. They have often will offer creative writing classes, and a lot of them are now at home, so you're doing it via Zoom or it's online classes. So that's helpful to learn because then you get creative feedback and you learn the process that way. So that
Yeah.
is another good way to learn. I think you could take advantage of that. And there are a lot of really good craft books out there on writing. I
Oh,
just
for
I just think there are a lot of people like you and like me now that are doing self-publishing, and you have to be careful to really learn the craft and not just, well, I can self-publish, so it doesn't matter. If you
right.
want to be taken as a serious author and you want people to follow you and buy your books or whatever you're going to do, you have to take that writing seriously. You can't just slap something up there and hope it's going to be good.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important to run it through several
The
people.
readers.
Yeah, and even a variety. I have a reader who prefers mostly like action, and then I have another one who's just very into the historical fiction world. I have one that's in like young adult, like just to have feedback, not just in your
Genre.
yeah, your genre, but just from all different angles. Because at the end of the day, like if it's a good book, I think anyone would be able to appreciate it, even if
Right.
that's not the genre.
Well, and the only thing I can't read is fantasy and sci-fi. If
I'm
I
the
can't,
same.
if I can't put
I
myself
cannot.
in the book, I can't do it. So, but in everything else, if it's a good book and I'm sure yours is faith-based as a Christian author, so you have that woven in there as well. I have a sister that really came to know Christ through Christian fiction. So you just don't know what people are going to reading that book, and you want to present the best you can. So,
Yeah.
well, Emily, it's been such a pleasure. I wish you the best with this baby. Boy,
Thank you.
better you than me, I'll tell you. But I'm excited for you. That's good news, and I'm just thrilled for this book coming out. I hope it does really well, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed talking to you.
I always enjoy talking to you too. Next time, next book, let's do this again.
Yes. Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay, bye.
Bye.